everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, delighted to be talking with someone who is a comics hero, a comics favorite of mine, and that is artist, creator Rick Burchett. Rick, thank you for jumping in
Hi,
and talking.
Jason. Thank you for asking me. This is nice. I
Oh,
haven't done too
absolutely.
many podcasts. I think maybe I've done one other one, and that
Oh, okay.
was a long time ago. So
Well, thank you for coming to another podcast, and we'll make sure that it's a good experience for you as much as possible.
I'm sure it will be, you
Yeah.
know.
Delighted to meet you, and I'll mention a couple of titles for folks out there to check out and to think about. Black Hawk being one of those, The Phantom, She-Hulk, Funky Winterbeam, which is fun to
Yeah.
say, as well as a range of DC characters, including Batman, and some of their prime characters as well. So you have done a wide range of work.
Yeah, I have in 40 years. Actually, it's getting close to 45 years now. So I've done quite a bit of work, everything from Archie to Superman to Wonder Woman to just about all of the main DC characters I've had a hand at one point or another. And and when I started out in the early 80s, that was the big boom of the black and whites. And I worked for just about every company that existed then, and they have all since gone the way of the white wolf, and that's not my fault. They all went their way, and I usually did maybe one or two books for them, and it was a good time to break in, good time to learn the craft, I guess I should say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you certainly had a wonderful history with the comics, and I'm curious about what linked you with art, what linked you with storytelling to begin with.
When I was 5 years old, I decided I wanted to draw comics. I started by copying cartoons from TV. Uh, that was when I decided this. The things that were on TV were the old Warner Brothers cartoons and Popeye and anything that the 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 uh, the TV shows could get that didn't cost too much to show. And I would copy those characters as I was watching them or after I watched them. And I assumed everybody did that. I thought all kids, that was one of the things they did. They played baseball, they went riding their bikes, and they drew cartoon characters. Later, I found out that wasn't the case. And I found out that I was kind of an oddball. But yeah, that was when I decided. I was five. I decided I wanted to be a cartoonist, although I didn't know that's what they were called. That's what I wanted to do. And soon after that, I discovered newspaper comics. I was lucky because we had the Post-Dispatch in St. Louis. We had the Post-Dispatch and we had the Globe Democrat, and they each carried different comics. So I had a wide range of comics to look at. And because my grandparents who lived next door had the Globe Democrat. And so I got to see everything. And I just went nuts with all these. And then one day, my older sister, I have two older sisters, considerably older than me, and they took me down to our local drugstore. I grew up in a small town, and we had a drugstore, and that drugstore had two spinner racks of comics.
Mhm, mhm.
And there was no going back at that point. I saw that, all the colors and the characters, things I'd never seen before, and I went nuts. I immediately began buying comics wherever I could, and it was fantasy land for me. I decided for sure that's what I was going to do. There was never a plan B.
Mhm.
Uh, that was it. And even though my parents they didn't know about that. They were, maybe you need to get like a steady job and keep that as a, well. I'd always say, okay, fine, but I never agreed with him. I knew that wasn't a possibility. I was going to draw comics or else, and I didn't know what or else was. But that's where it all started. And back then, and we're talking the the 50s and early 60s, back then there were no schools
Hmm.
to teach comic storytelling. In fact, that wasn't too far removed from a time when the Senate was trying to outlaw comics
Yeah.
completely, and I didn't know that at the time, but it was something that people wouldn't encourage their children to do for a living.
Hmm.
But that's all I wanted to do, and there was no place to learn that. So I went to the best school that I could find, which was the comics.
Yeah.
I had the best teachers in the world. I had teachers with names like Kirby and Ditko, and Williamson and Prentice and Toth, and all of those guys. That's who I learned from. Uh, I was pretty much self-taught, but like I say, I had a pretty good faculty, and I just kept at it. I found myself leaning more towards storytelling than style,
Hmm.
which later on would kind of not serve me well. But I really got into the idea of telling stories with words and pictures.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was something about that that fascinated me. And it was decades later before I realized what that was. But that's what I really was hooked on. Was It wasn't so much how something was drawn, but what it was used for.
Yeah.
And I just it was a fascinating art form for me. I still think it is. I still think it's the best art form there is. I still want to try to get better. I'm never good enough, and I'll never be good enough. And I came to that conclusion a long time ago, but that's okay
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
every day is exciting because I know I won't sit down and draw something that I'm completely happy with, and I'll just keep doing it until I get it right. I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think about craft that way, teaching, writing, art.
Oh yeah,
It's an ongoing
it is.
process.
It is. And in comics, the way it's separated in different jobs, I have the ability to learn different jobs and try to get good at each one, penciling and inking and whatever else. I started out as an inker in the business, and I love inking. I just really love it. I'm sorry to see it kind of go by the wayside
Mhm.
here recently because of all of the digital inking that's being done. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with that, I think we're missing a lot by not having actual physical inkers on a lot of the work. It adds something to the art, and each inker that comes on board adds something a little different.
Mhm.
And I think that's important. I think it different inkers on one penciler can change a lot, can
Yeah.
make a lot of difference in the work. It can change the tone of the work. It can change the energy in the work. It's an individual stamp on that work that you can't really uh, put your finger on. It's like the only ink proof artist I know is Jack Kirby. I mean,
Mhm.
you could put some really bad inkers on Jack Kirby and it still looks great. But everybody else, the inking that goes on their work can really, it can either dull it down or it can make it sing. You know, it can
Hmm.
take a really good penciler and make him great. I've seen it happen a million times. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons I love comics so much. I still love them, you know. At my advanced age, I still, I will sing their praises to anybody who's dumb enough to sit down and listen.
I am also a person that likes to sing the praises of comics as well. And imagine you were talking about those spinner racks. So imagine your body of work on a spinner rack. Where would you want someone to start? What's
Oh
the
gosh.
experience to start with?
Well, I guess I would have to start with the most commercial thing I've done, which
Hmm.
is Batman Adventures.
Hmm. Hmm.
That is, in fact, that's for a lot of people, that's the only thing I've done. Um, and whenever I go to conventions, that's all people, ask me to. They ask me if I have any originals. They ask me if I would do a sketch of Harley. They ask, it's all about Batman Adventures,
Yeah.
which I got no complaints with. We had a great, I mean, that was 15 years of my career. We had a really fine group of creators on those books. I
Hmm.
am very proud to be a part of that group. I wish they knew some of the other things I've done, but
Yeah.
if that's the thing that I have to be hang my hat on, that's not too bad.
Correct. Correct.
So that would be on there. I would have some Blackhawk on there just because
Hmm.
I grew up loving the Blackhawks and being a big fan of them. Uh, by the time I actually got to do them, it was the best of times and the worst of times. I got to do Blackhawks. That was the best of times. But the schedule that I had to meet on that it was a nightmare.
Hmm.
And so I was constantly behind schedule, constantly. When I first started Blackhawk, the first time I picked up a pencil to draw the first page of Blackhawk in Action Comics Weekly, I was 6 weeks behind.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it never got better. So there's that. I'd have to put Blackhawk on there. Um, Huntress, Cry for Blood, that I did with Greg Rucka,
Hmm.
I think is a really solid piece of work by Greg, obviously, and actually by me. I think that I did some of my better work on that, and nobody knows I even did it. Um, Another thing, let's see, I did like a half a year of Green Lantern,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I put that on there just so people could see that I did it.
Yeah.
Because it was, nobody knows that. Um, and then another thing, I don't know, it wouldn't fit on a spinner rack, but Greg Rucka and I did an internet strip
Hmm.
for 4 years called Lady Saber and the Pirates of the Ineffable Ether.
Hmm.
And that includes some of the best stuff I've done. And also, I taught myself how to color on that strip.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I remember we were talking about it, doing it, and Greg said, "Well, this is going to have to be a color strip because black and white strips just don't go well on the internet." I said, "Yeah, you're probably right." He said, "So we're going to have to find a colorist, and I'm a writer." Oh, okay, I get it. So I ended up coloring the strip, and we did, like I say, we did it for 4 years, twice a week. We actually did a Kickstarter where we made enough money to put together a book, a hardcover book that was pretty successful. I mean, we did we the the Kickstarter we did was very successful. We were going to, we figured, we did our homework. We found a printer and we figured out that we were going to need $27,500 to print the books that we needed to print. And so we we were all ready. We did our pitch for Kickstarter, and we gave ourselves a month to get that money. It was going to start on the 1st of May of that year. I can't remember what year it was. It was going to start on the 1st of May, run to the end of the month. And we were hoping we'd get, in fact, we had a meeting the night before we started, Greg and I and our third knucklehead, Dr. Eric Newsom, who was our communications guy. He's brilliant, and it wouldn't have worked without him. He's the MVP of the whole thing. And we had a meeting the night before, and we decided that, yeah, we might make it. We might actually make our goal, but it'll be at the very last minute and it'll just come in right under the wire. So we have to be patient.
Hmm.
We all, hitting ourselves on the back and we have to be patient. So the next day we started the Kickstarter. We made our goal in less than 8 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
And by the time the whole program was finished, we had made uh, $210,000,
Yeah.
which was I mean, we were getting phone calls from MTV. I mean, we were just inundated with people asking us how we did it and all this kind of stuff. And to this day, I don't think any of us know how we did it. It just happened.
Phantom speaks, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was. So anyway, I would have that on the spinner rack somehow. I mean, stick a hardcover on there. But I think those would be the main things. Oh, one other thing. I am a huge Western fan.
Hmm.
Okay. I love Westerns in all their form. And when I was a little kid, I really thought I was going to be able to draw every kind of comic, and Westerns was going to be one of them. Well, flash forward a few decades, and nobody's doing Western comics. So that's not going to happen. Well, Marvel was going to do a digital first story of Kid Colt Outlaw. So I sent an email to the editor of that, and I said, "Do you have an artist in mind?" And he wrote back and said, "I'm sorry." Well, first of all, after I sent him the email, I thought I should have sent him a sketch of the character so he could see how I would do it. So I drew a sketch of the character. And in the meantime, I got an email from him. He said, "I'm sorry, but we've already got an artist in mind, maybe some other time." Well, I sent him the sketch anyway. And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Here's a sketch of what I might have done and all this stuff." So then I get an email back from him and it says, "You just made my job a lot harder." He said, "Sit still. I'll get in touch with you on Monday." So he did, and he gave me the job. So I got to do a Western for Marvel, Kid Colt Outlaw story that was digital first, and then they did a printing of it. So yeah, I would put that on the spinner rack as well.
Love it. Love it. You were talking about getting to work in kind of the comic strip format.
Yeah.
But what are some of the differences there? How did you sort of make your
Well,
way into
I
that?
uh, I pandered. I just to be honest. No, I when it first started, I wrote a fan letter to Tom Baddock
Mhm.
because I really liked what he had done with Funky. He had taken it from a gag a day strip to a story strip with more serious stories. And this was when he had just finished the Lisa story, the woman who got cancer, and he followed the whole story through, her whole story through. And I wrote him a fan letter, and I signed it with my name. And so I get a fan letter back from him saying, "Is this the Rick Burchett who's the brain surgeon or the one who draws Batman Adventures?"
Uh,
Come to find out, he was a big fan of Batman Adventures. So we started this back and forth pen pal thing. And then one day he called me. Come to find out, he's a huge comics fan. And he one day he called me and he said, "Hey, my penciler is he's retiring, and I need somebody to take over the pencils on Funky. Would you be interested?" Well,
Hmm.
this is like doing newspaper strips. This is a big thing for me, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think so. So so I did that for 2 years, and then Chuck Ayres, his penciler, decided he didn't like retirement that much, and he wanted to come back. And so Tom called me and laid it all out. I said, fine, I'd done it for 2 years, and that was, more than I figured I'd get. So Chuck came back and penciled it again, and then um, Chuck was going to retire again, and then Tom decided, well, I've been doing Funky for 50 years. I think I can afford to hang it up. So that's what he did. Quit the strip on its 50th year. So then Tom calls me again and he says, "Hey, I'm really missing writing the Funky characters." I said, "Well, okay, what do you want me to do?" And he said, "Well, I want to do new stories of the Funky characters and put them on my website." I said, "Oh, well, that's great." He goes, "Do you want to draw them?" I said, "Sure, you know."
Got it.
So I got back to working for Tom again, and then along the way, I've known people who have done other newspaper strips. I know Terry Beatty, and Terry was doing the Phantom Sundays at one point, and he asked me to fill in for him for about a month, which I did. And then I know Joe Staten. In fact, Joe Staten gave me my start in the business, and he was doing Minute Mysteries, Dick Tracy Minute Mysteries, and he asked me if I would fill in for him. Like it was 2 weeks of dailies for Dick Tracy, which I love doing. So things like that have come my way. Just fill in stuff that I've loved doing, and it was nepotism in each case. And they said, "Yeah, hey, well, you want to come do this?" They knew I'd want to. So things like that. I mean, I know the guy who's doing the Phantom Sundays now, Jeff Weigel. He lives right across the river in Illinois. I know Jeff quite well. So any day now, I'm expecting the phone to
Oh,
ring.
yes. Absolutely.
And Jeff will
Absolutely.
say, "You want to do that?" And I'll say yes. So yeah, it's newspaper. I've always loved newspaper strips, still love them. I buy the collections and read them. I am heartsick at the way they are presented now.
Yeah.
They're postage stamps, and it's just I it's a shame, but what are you going to do? It's commerce, and they don't realize what they have. I think, newspapers don't realize that um, the comic strips, the newspaper strips, are their best product. Uh, People can get the news and the weather and horoscopes and crossword puzzles and all that stuff. They can get that a lot of different places. They can only get the newspaper strips in one place. And they don't realize that's a very, very important commodity that they have. And they should pay more attention to it and do more with it. They're kind of leaning in that direction on the internet,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they're not really, you know, lighting a fire under it. They're not doing the best they can with it. But again, it's commerce, and the death of the newspaper strip started after World War II. So it's been going on a long time.
Do a revival, hopefully.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll tell you what, it really has kind of you know, has made me a little heartened is what Dan Shade is doing with Flash Gordon in
Hmm.
the newspaper strips. I mean, it's, people complain that it's not Alex Raymond. No, it's not Alex Raymond, but show me something that is Alex Raymond.
Right.
Um, what Dan has done is he's looked at the size he has to work in, and he's come up with a style of art that works to that style and towards that size. And it's just it's great. It's fun to look at. I mean, that's what you have to consider if you're not going to have an Alex Raymond type artwork or a Hal Foster type artwork. You're going to have something that's fun to look at.
Right.
And I think Dan has found that, and I wish him well. It's just great.
Well, it sounds like you're keeping up as a reader. What currently has your creative focus?
Anything written by Mark Waid.
Absolutely. I'm with you on
uh,
that.
I, Mark is he's he's brilliant. He can
Hmm.
write anything. He can make anything interesting, and he can also feed the 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 grid the I don't know what you call it, the needs of the fanboy.
Hmm. Hmm.
He can, he can fit the needs of the fanboy without pushing everyone else away. He can make things that the fanboy will look at and go, "Oh, well, look what he's done there." But the people who don't know what he's doing, won't be pushed away. It's really brilliant what he does. Um, anything that Mark writes, because he's been um, kind of allying himself with some really good artists. And here lately, he's been uh, putting really good stuff together with my friend Chris Somney.
Hmm.
Chris lives not too far from here. And I remember years ago, Chris doesn't do cons anymore. But Chris and I were at the same con, and he was just getting started. And I went over to talk to him, and his wife was there, and we were talking. And Chris went off to do a sketch or something, and his wife turned to me and she said, "Do you think you can really make a living at this?" I said, "Yeah, I think he can." So it was, she was a little concerned about the commerce of doing it for a living, and I tried to reassure her that there was nothing to worry about. And one of the few times in my life I've been right. Uh, Chris is incredible. I just love his work. In some ways, I hate the kid because he's so much younger than me, and he's so good. But yeah, Chris, um, uh, a lot of people today follow writers,
Hmm.
and I can understand that, I guess, because art in comics has kind of become um, just kind of it's not considered. I mean, people don't follow artists anymore; they follow writers, and I think that's because most writers don't write visual stories.
Hmm.
So the artist really can't do their job.
Yeah.
Most writers write stories that are uh, people talking.
Hmm.
They're standing around, they're talking about this, that, and the other thing, and there's just and they put them in very mundane places. And so there's nothing going on visually.
Hmm.
And I think if that's a shame because it doesn't allow the artist to do his job.
Yeah.
Uh, there's only so much you can do with two people talking in a room, or three people, or four. It's you know I've done that type of story. In fact, I did Greg Rucka and I did a story one time. He called me up and he said, "Hey, I got this story. Batman and Commissioner Gordon.
Hmm.
They're in Commissioner Gordon's backyard, and it's at night, and there's one light source, and they're talking for 24 pages. You want to do it?" Well, he knew I'd want to do it. I mean, it was like that's the kind of thing that oh yeah, do I ever, it's such an impossible thing to do that he knew I'd want to do it.
Uh-huh,
So,
uh-huh.
and I did, and it turned out not too bad. I mean, the one thing I can say about it is I didn't repeat myself in any of the panels. Each panel is different.
That
So
is an accomplishment.
yeah. So anyway, but that's the kind of stuff that everybody's being asked to do today, or they're being asked to do action set pieces that are like there's three panels on a page, or there's two panels on a page, and it's a lot of pinups,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's not really they're not really being tasks with telling the story.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard people a lot of times, even artists a lot of times say, you can't do a car chase in comics. Well, yes, you can, because I've done it and I've seen other people do it. It's just you have to think in a different way.
Yeah.
You have to think in terms of the car being your hero,
Hmm. Hmm.
and and you have to shoot it from all different angles and all that stuff. I love doing things, drawing things in inclement weather, you
Yeah.
know, thunderstorms and snowstorms and things like that. I love doing that kind of stuff. And so it's like it's well, tell you, the Walt Disney movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Hmm.
At the end of it, they've got a big fight scene, a squid attacking the Nautilus, and all the sailors coming on board to fight it off. Okay, well, they
Hmm.
shot that entire scene. And Walt Disney looked at it. He said, "It's not exciting enough. Let's add a thunderstorm."
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's kind of the way I approach a lot of scenes like that are they could, maybe they're exciting, but they could really be exciting if you add some bad weather
Yeah.
or you change it somehow, change the environment somehow. Um, and I think that artists today need to think in those terms because what they're being asked to do is, kind of. Now,
Hmm.
there's another aspect of that, and that's if you have those kinds of stories and you have an incredible art style,
Hmm.
pull it off. The Human Target series that came
Hmm.
out last year, that was brilliant. I mean, but the art style carried it because the story itself was pretty much just a detective story, you know,
Hmm.
a mystery, which to me, mysteries are hard to do. And because they're nothing, they're all internal and they're all just talky.
Yeah.
So for them to use that art style, I mean, again, you've got something fun to look at. You know, you have your story. The story comes at the end. It's, bing bang, you got your end and it's exciting and you find out what's going on. But the artwork carries you through that whole thing because it's just so brilliant, you know. So it's things like that. There are too many. I think there are too many artists working today, working alike, working
Hmm.
in like styles. They're getting on their computers and they're using photo reference and they're putting it up there and they're changing their photo reference however they want to, and then they bump up the contrast and they don't need an inker, and it's like that's fine, except when you got 12 guys doing it,
Hmm.
it kind of levels out the playing field. Um, So but then I'm an old guy. I got to keep that in mind. And those guys are getting a lot of work, and I'm not. So there you go. You got to look at it that way. But yeah, I think that as far as what I look at, I wait and see what comes out, uh, and I look at who the writer is, and then I look at the art, and sometimes it's just I think, and also the fact that I know it's going to be coming out in a trade paperback
Hmm.
in 6 months. Um, do I want to buy those individual monthlies or do I want to wait? And it's just, eh, it's got to be what it has to be is it has to be something that I know I'm going to pick up again
Hmm.
in 6 months or a year to look at. I
Yeah.
don't want to just get it and read it one time and there it goes. Because I still pick up the stuff that I bought when I was 10 years old and look at it. And so I have to, that's the litmus test for me is this something I'm going to want to look at again? Um, is this worth shelf space?
Mhm.
And much of the stuff today isn't, unfortunately. But it's it's somebody's favorite book, so fine. If they like it, that's great.
Yeah.
Who am I to say?
You're a guy who's done it for 40 years.
I'm the guy who's
Where
done it for 40 years, but most people don't know who I am. That's the thing. That's really it's like you've been in the business for nearly 45 years. You have 3 Eisner Awards. You've worked with virtually every major writer in the business, and people don't know who you are. So you have to look at it that way. If you ever start thinking, hey, I'm a big shot, no, just go and sit at a comic show for a while. And then you'll find pretty soon that no, you're not a big shot. You're just an old guy who's sitting there. Especially if the only thing they think you ever did was Batman Adventures number 12. It was the one that introduced Harley Quinn.
oh yes.
And I have signed more of those books than any book in history. And I had an interesting conversation with a guy one time at a convention. He came to me and he asked me to sign it. I signed it. And he said, well, now you created Harley Quinn, right? I said, no, I didn't. That was created for the TV show by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. No, no,
Mhm.
no, you created her, right? I said, no, I didn't create her. I said, I inked the book that she first appeared in. But no, no, but yeah, I know that, but you created her. No, I didn't create her. I'm sure you did. No, I didn't. And we kept going back and forth, and I could not convince this guy that I hadn't created the character. It was like, come on, just take me at my word. I didn't create this character. So it has been, a great thing and really like an albatross around my neck. I just, people are always bringing pristine copies of the book to me so
Mhm.
that they can get them, slabbed or whatever. And I just, but yeah, I signed that book hundreds of times, and it's and they said, "You know how much this is worth?" I said, "No, I do not." And they say they run off some incredibly wrong number, and I'll say, "Well, do you know what? I have 24 copies of that at home sitting under my drawing table," and they go nuts. And
Yeah.
how do you get those? I said, "Well, DC sends me 24 copies of everything I do." Well,
Mhm.
what are you going to do with them? I have no idea. I said, if we ever get a bird, I'll put him in the bottom of the bird cage. And they just go nuts. So, yeah, Batman Adventures 12 is my legacy, and it's so there it is. What can I say?
I think Black Hawk was the first thing I discovered of yours, so that's kind of it's interesting. It's fun because I started reading in the mid to late '80s, and I remember Black Hawk was right there, and then of course the Batman Adventures came along. But I've enjoyed a range of what you've created, and
Well, thank you. I,
yeah.
I, Blackhawk is, despite the fact that it was hard to work on because of the scheduling. Um, it started in Action Weekly,
Hmm.
and everybody started on their strip first. And Mike Grell wrote the first continuity for that. And at the time, Mike was taking an extended tour of the Far East. And what he was doing was uh, he was dictating the stories in a tape recorder, and then he would send them to DC and New York. They would transcribe them and send them out to the artists. Well, he did that with our first continuity, and he sent it to the US, and the US Customs promptly lost it. And Mike was off on his tour or whatever. Nobody could get a hold of him.
Hmm.
It was the only copy because he literally talked into a tape recorder and didn't write anything down. And they lost it for 6 weeks. So while everybody else was working on their weekly comic strip, I was waiting for mine for 6 weeks.
Hmm.
So I finally got it, and I was 6 weeks behind, and I just, drew like crazy. Then, after our second continuity, the editor, Mike Gold, called me and said, "Oh, great news." He said, "Blackhawk is the favorite strip in Action Weekly, and we're going to spin it into its own book." And I said, "Oh, that's great news, Mike." I said, "Who's going to do it?" He goes, "Well, you are." I said, "Mike, I'm 6 weeks behind." He goes, "I know. You don't worry, don't worry. You'll catch up." And I said, "Mike, this is going to be a 24-page book once a month." He goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, who's going to ink it?" He goes, "Well, you are. Everybody likes your inks better than what. Mike, we can't do that." So anyway, he talked me into it, and we were doing the book, and it wasn't getting any closer to being on deadline. And then about, I don't know, 4 months in, Mike calls me again. He goes, "Hey, great news." Anytime he says great news, there's trouble. He said, "Great news." He goes, "We're going to do a Blackhawk annual this year, 48 pages." I said, "Well, that is good news, Mike. Who's going to do it?" He said, "Well, you are." I said, "Mike, I'm working on a 24-page monthly book, and you want me to do a 48-page?" He says, "Yeah, yeah, no problem. I'll get you an inker." Well, he got me John Nyberg, which was not bad. I mean, John was a good artist. But it was crazy like that. I'd be finishing up issue 6, and issue 5 would be coming out. It was just nuts for the entire run of that book. And it was, like I say, I love the characters. I loved working with them, but it was, it was nuts. I got a lot older during those 2 years. But yeah, I love doing it. And I feel like Blackhawk is unfinished business for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
I really want another crack at them. And I want another crack at them with more time, because I love those characters. I love airplanes. I really want to do them right, and it's unlikely to happen, but it's one of those things that I think about often. Because I know what I'd want to do with them, and I just you know, it just come on, just give me,
Yeah.
the gods of comics, just give me a shot, one more shot. That's all I ask.
Oh, absolutely. And may it be so. maybe so. If I'm a listener out there and I want to find out more about you, if I want to see your work, where are some places I might go, conventions, online spaces, and other such things?
Well, I don't have any online. I don't have a website, which my wife continually rags me about. You need a website. You need a web, and I just don't have one. Um, as far as conventions do, I am doing Planet Comic Con in Kansas City in I think it's the third week of March.
Hmm.
I have done Planet every year of its existence, which is 26 years now. And so I will be there. I will be a brand new convention happening next door to St. Louis in St. Charles, Missouri, called Two Rivers Con, which will be a very different kind of comic convention because it will be half of it will be outdoors and half of it will be indoors. Uh,
Interesting.
they are the convention promoters will be working hand in hand with the city of St. Charles, and the actual venues for the artists and the dealers and everything will be indoors at the local, like there's an old theater that they have where part of it will be held. There's a Coca-Cola museum where part of it will be held. There's another, the old post office where part of it will be held. That'll all be indoors, and then you walk between those venues outdoors in what is called Old Town St. Charles, which is an old, it's a lot of the old buildings where the St. Charles was the um, first state capital of Missouri, and it's right on the Missouri River, and they have casinos there and stuff like that, and so I will be at the inaugural Two Rivers convention this year. It looks like it's going to be great. I If they pull it off the way they plan, it'll be really one of the best conventions ever because of the way it'll be set up. You'll be walking between the venues, and there will be restaurants and shops and all kinds of things. It'll be pretty cool. So I will be there. That is Labor Day week, not like Memorial Day weekend. I will be there along with Roy Thomas and who else they got? Phil Hester and Andy Parks and some other local guys. And a lot of the voice actors from Warner Brothers will be there. The Justice League will be there. And they're too cool. I love those people. Love hanging out with them. They were at it was last year at the Kansas City show. They were at a surprise birthday party for me
Mm.
that some of them held, and it was just cool, you know. Oh, there's poison ivy. Oh, gee, it was I go nuts about around voice actors. I really had a thing for them when I was a little kid. Just
Yeah,
you know, whenever I found out that all the Hanna-Barbera characters were done by two guys, I was it was like they
it's pretty
what?
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of those will be there. Dan Reba, one of the directors of the Batman animated show, will be there, and so it'll be a lot of fun. So if you got nothing to do Memorial Day weekend, go to St. Charles. Um, so I'll be there, and I've been asked to do a third show, which I'm still kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not. I'm in rehab right now. I know you can't tell that,
Mhm.
but I had a major surgery at the end of August. My I've had some back problems and had two fusion surgeries. And my doctors, I was still having problems with balance, and I went to my doctor, and he said we could do a third fusion, but it's really not going to help. He said it could make it worse. So he said, "Do you want to take a chance on something?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. What do you mean?" He goes, I want to put a new spine in your back
Oh, wow.
made of titanium. And I thought, well, that's science fiction, isn't
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
it? And he said, no, he said, I've done it before. He said, and it should fix your problems. He
Mm.
said, the problem
Wow.
right now is your spine does this, and I want to fix it so it does this
Hmm.
S curve like it should. So I said, you want to roll the dice with me? And I said, okay. And that's what they did on the last day of August. And ever since then, I spent 11 hours on the table. And then I had a week of ICU and I had 2 weeks of inpatient therapy. And now I've been in outpatient therapy since the beginning of September.
Wow.
And I'm there for a little while yet. So I really don't know doing any more shows than what I've committed to. I don't know if I should or not.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's been my life for the past few months, and it's been an interesting road, I'll tell you.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. And I'm sending care and good rehab
Thank
vibes.
you,
And
thank
man,
you.
you're Metallo over here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I know it is not what I expected, but I'll tell you. The therapists that I work with are incredible. I I've never experienced anything like this before, and they're just incredible. And if I get through the other end of this whole thing, it'll be because of them. They are just the best. And I go 5 days a week for 5 hours a day, and I have progressed enough so that they think I can cut back to 3 hours, which, that's great.
Yeah.
But I can walk now without a walker. I can, I'm getting better, put it
Good.
that way. So it's been interesting, you know. But, now my spine is younger than I am. It
This is
just,
true. Yeah. Well, may the journey continue to be healthy and strong. And
well, thank you.
I appreciate your time so much and glad to have you back anytime.
This has been fun. I really enjoy it. And you ask smart questions, which
We try.
you know, you really do. This is great.
Good,
I,
good.
and I didn't even have to lie about anything.
Yeah, there you go. Win-win, win-win.